served on the council. By profession, I'm a land use planner. I do consulting for both public and private organizations. Anyway, so what does the charter mean to our pocketbook? First, I'd like to talk a little bit about what the current rules are. You've heard that we need a charter in order to keep the state from telling us to do stuff and not providing funding. If we had a charter, that couldn't happen. Well, the fact is, Article 13B of the California State Constitution prohibits the legislature from mandating any actions, any programs, or even expansion of programs at the local level without providing funding. That's in the state constitution, and the constitution can only be changed by the voters of the state of California. And that would be very difficult to change. So, there are no new state unfunded mandates. That's been in effect for 37 years. So, that's not an issue. Another issue. The state could reallocate our tax dollars, and if we have a charter, the state could reallocate our tax dollars. Well, if we don't have a charter, the state can reallocate our tax dollars, but if we do have a charter, the state can reallocate our tax dollars. Prop 13, which we all know and love, it keeps us in our houses, actually had a clause that gave the state legislature the authority to reallocate property tax revenues. So therefore, you may have heard of references to ERAF. It was, it's one of these acronyms, educational reallocation of something. Anyway, that was when the legislature decided we're going to take money that normally would go to cities and we're going to give it to schools. And basically that was because then the state didn't have to fund the schools, and then they used it to backfill other programs at the state level. So essentially the legislature, and that's in the state constitution, part of Prop 13, they can reallocate local property taxes. There is another clause in the state constitution that says the legislature cannot reallocate taxes that are collected locally for local purposes. The two taxes that we have in that regard are the hotel tax and the business license tax. Now, the state constitution already says that the legislature can't do that. You, the voters of the state of California, would have to change the state constitution. So, it's not a protection that you don't have already. Okay, let's move on to the charter itself. The charter itself, as a charter city, the council would have a little more flexibility about taxing and assessments. It's kind of esoteric. Another thing that it would do is it would eliminate the state limit on minor fines. I don't know how many of you have been in what we call the neighborhood enhancement program areas. We had people in our area who got cited for all sorts of things. House numbers not in the right place, house numbers not the right size. You have a truck parked in your driveway that has a logo for a business on it that you've been parking there for 20 years and none of your neighbors care. Well, the fines on all those minor types of things would no longer have a ceiling. So that's something to think about. But what we really need to think about are long-run costs as well. We know that litigation is a potential. This charter says that it's to be interpreted liberally, so who knows what that means. You look at the city of Glendale, it's had piles and piles of litigation over its charter. Vista currently is in litigation over its charter. And right now, we're running up $500 an hour costs, probably thousands of dollars a day with outside attorneys already. So where will this lead? And in addition, we have to look at outside contracting. That can save money, but it can be more costly. For example, or it may have costs in the long run due to short-term savings. For example, the city of Anaheim wanted to outsource their graffiti. Anaheim's a charter city, they could do that. Graffiti removal. They got a graffiti removal team on, and then the company found they couldn't remove the graffiti in a timely manner, and they really couldn't fulfill the contract. Well, here's the issue. The city had already gotten rid of its equipment, which is very costly, because I don't know if you're familiar with the truck, but it matches the paint and everything, so you don't just have big white blobs getting rid of the graffiti. So now, what does Anaheim do? They have to start over, all the capital expenses, all the startup costs, rebid it, and meanwhile the graffiti builds up. That's a long-run cost, not only fiscally, but that's a long-run cost to the quality of the community. And in addition, our contracts could be more expensive. I'm not saying some of these things will happen now, but there are limits in the state contract code that specifically say the lowest responsible bidder has to be retained for many services. And without that protection in the public contract code, we may not get the lowest responsible bidder. We could get someone who's a higher bidder. And what we want are the best qualified contractors, not the best connected. Thank you.